Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic, in excellent spirits. The tree is lit. The gifts are wrapped. The cookies and hot cocoa are ready for Santa. That must mean Christmas is near as I send my present of entertaining and passionate sports talk to keep you informed on all that's going on in sports, as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with your host, JAYREELZ. For my first timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle or even as early as this past Thursday, I welcome you guys and gals back. And just some quick housekeeping. I won't have a podcast this coming Thursday. Obviously, that is Christmas Day. And also the following week, which will be New Year's Day. So as timing would have it, just one podcast over the next 2 weeks. So you got me today and also next Monday. But don't despair. Anything that's happening in the world of sports, you have to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I don't mean it like that you have to, but you know what I mean. I am also trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by January 1st. So real quick, for those who aren't aware or aren't in tune or say, wait a minute, JAYREELZ has a channel? Yes, on YouTube at JAYREELZ. So any take that happens in the world of sports, you're going to get my minute and a half blurb of what's going on. And like I mentioned, I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by January 1st. So with my heart and my hustle, I'm just going to need your help to hit subscribe. So if you could do that right now, even if as you're watching this, because on top of that, on YouTube, this coming Wednesday, although like I mentioned, no podcast Thursday, but I will have a live stream. And I do a live stream each and every Wednesday. So even though it's Christmas Eve, I still will have my Wednesday high noon Eastern time. It'll go down as we recap what's happening. But the following week, with it being New Year's Eve, so I'm plugging this now. The time right now, I'm looking at 9:30 a.m., which is usually the time I do my podcast pregame live streams, which I did one this morning, which was excellent. We were talking about everything from the wild NFL games to talking about is sports rigged when it comes to gambling and the officials, etc. Talking about my drink of choice, the tri-state area. So that live stream is pretty much anything goes. I've even had some weird comments from people about personal toilets. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. So you definitely want to hop on board the YouTube channel at JAYREELZ. And on New Year's Eve, real quick, I'm planning to do an epic live stream, which will probably start around 9:30, maybe 9 o'clock, but that's why you have to subscribe. So you can be locked in, tapped in, dialed in on everything that's happening, not only in the world of sports, but even with the live streams and what I'm going to put forth, because I'm going to close out 2025 with a bang and definitely go into 2026 like a skyrocket. So please, people, if you could do that, I'd sincerely appreciate it. So I wanted to get that out of the way. One podcast this week and next week only. Obviously, with Christmas and New Year's falling on a Thursday, no podcast on those days. But if you want to get any of my takes on what's happening in sports throughout this time period, please subscribe to the channel. Now that I got that out of the way, let's get right to it, because the NFL, to me, the theme right now is the playoff picture is pretty much crystal clear. There are a couple of instances which will break down, no doubt, 100%. But with the way it's shaping up for week 17 and 18, who knows what we're going to have? Because if we were thinking that in week 18, with the matchups and how they were going to fall, where it looked like you could have had about 5 or 6 games that would have any type of impact, especially on the playoff chase, well, right now, it's certainly not looking that way unless something crazy is going to happen. So as we break this down, and I even have to go back to Thursday night because that game gets forgotten and almost swallowed up, considering what had taken place here over the last 48 hours, dating back to Saturday night there in Washington or late afternoon. And then the games yesterday, etc. And you also have a good game tonight with Indianapolis and San Francisco. And the Colts are literally hanging by a thread with the Texans winning again, as they had to sweat against the Vegas Raiders. But they won and now put them in a situation to where the Colts are going to have to run the table. And it has to start tonight against a formidable Niner team that has a pretty good shot to even win the NFC West. And I'll break that down momentarily. But I have to start with what took place in Seattle on Thursday night, to where not only was that by far the game of the year, but it probably could have been the game of the decade. And I understand the NFL regular season gets swallowed up and not many people are going to remember these types of games, even though it was against two teams that were going for the NFC West right there, as we saw in living color on Amazon. I had Amazon and Prime together. That's why I said Amazon. But on Amazon Prime, to where whomever was going to win that game would certainly have a leg up in the division. They both came in with tied records atop the NFC West. And it looked like the Rams were in business. Obviously, Matthew Stafford was slinging it. Although they did stumble there in the fourth quarter where they weren't able to muster up any drives, but they put up enough points and had a situation where it was 30-14 there late in the fourth quarter, or early fourth quarter, I should say. And you had a situation where Sam Darnold, who threw a terrible pick earlier where it almost went for a pick six, but it ended up going into the end zone on the next play where the Rams took the lead. And then you had a situation where right there at the shadow of the goal line, the quarterback, Sam Darnold, threw an interception to Kobe Turner, who had a monster game there, the defensive lineman. And it looked like that was going to be it. About 9 minutes ago, up 16, the kryptonite for Sam Darnold happens to be the Rams, dating back to the playoff game last year when he was a member of the Vikings, the game earlier this year at SoFi where he threw 4 interceptions. And it looked like the Seahawks were just going to go off into the night with a good shot to make the playoffs, but certainly forget about the NFC West. And then all of a sudden it turned on the punt return by Rashid Shaheed as he takes it to the house to make it 30-22. And then with the 2-point conversion, of course. And then as the Seahawks get the game-tying touchdown, and of course they had to go for 2 there, 30-28, a bizarre turn of events to where Darnold threw a pass which was a lateral, hit off of I believe it was the Viking player's helmet. It was scooped up and taken into the end zone. It was actually, the ball was bouncing around and picked up by Zach Charbonnet, who completed the 2-point conversion, and everybody was standing around wondering what the hell was going on. But I believe they got the call right. Now, it's tricky because you have to wonder about when the whistle was blown. And I have to go back and watch. And I remember watching at the time, and for whatever reason, I didn't go back to watch, so that's my bad as far as doing homework. But that's a key, not only a key play in the game, but those are moments where you have to play until you hear the whistle, or don't take anything for granted. Think Joey Porter the week before in Baltimore, where he poked the ball away from Isaiah Likely, although it should have been a touchdown, as we know. But he played the ball throughout. And here was a situation where Charbonnet had the ball, just picked it up as if the football was on a street corner somewhere, tied the game at 30. Then the Rams, in overtime, they get the ball, and the Rams had opportunities. They had shots where they went 3 and out. Their offense sputtered. And you also had a situation where I believe they missed on a late field goal that they would have taken the lead. And that didn't come. Maybe that was Jason Myers. Let me double check, because I have all these games and all these scenarios in my head, getting ready and preparing for the podcast. But being it as it may, went into overtime. The Rams scored, and then the Seahawks answered back. They get the touchdown there. I think it was about 3 minutes ago, and they had to go for 2. Why are you going to kick for an extra point at that juncture of the game? What, you want to settle for a tie? You have to go for it. And that's the whole point of teams getting the ball in overtime, is for each team will get a shot. And knowing that they have to score a touchdown, it's up to them to want to go for 2, of course. But you got to go for 2. You're not trying to play for a tie. You're not going to put the ball in the Rams' hands to maybe go down and kick a field goal, because then the coach, Mike McDonald, will be vilified from coast to coast. But as it was, they get the 2-point conversion. They win 38-37. Seattle erupts. Everybody's going crazy. Seattle now has a 1-game advantage over the Rams in the NFC West as of right now. And that was just an enormous comeback, a big win by this Seahawk franchise. And you have to wonder where this is going to lead them to down the stretch. Now they got to go to Carolina, which I'll get to a little bit later, to play. And that's going to be tricky with the time zone difference, the 3 hours. Does Mike McDonald, the head coach, does he plan to take that trip a day earlier, similar to what he did back in week 2 when he went to Pittsburgh on Friday to prepare their game against the Steelers, a 1 o'clock game? Again, that 3-hour time difference does screw up a lot of teams. Just ask the Rams when they lost in Carolina earlier this year, or they lost in Philadelphia. Granted, they had a 26-7 lead, but they still lost. So you have to think about that, and I'm sure they're probably putting that well into the front of their minds. And think about it, the game was on Thursday, so they had a mini bye, so they certainly had plenty of time to think about it, and I would think that would probably be the case, knowing that they have the division right in front of them. And then they have to play the Niners in that final game of the season in San Francisco, and that's going to be enormous too, Because if the Niners win these next two games, tonight in Indianapolis, and have the Bears coming to Santa Clara, which is not going to be an easy game, and I believe that game is next Sunday night. So let's say if they do win these next two games, they will have full destiny in their hands to win the NFC West. That's why that win by Seattle was big, because it flips the division. If the Rams would have won that division, there would have been a game up. The Seahawks would have had no shot to tie them because the Rams would have swept the season series. And they go to Atlanta and play Arizona the last games of the season. So because of the Rams losing, it gave the Niners a chance that if they run the table, they will win the NFC West, because I have a better division record than the Rams. And that's something you have to keep in mind here, people. So the Niners are not out of the way from possibly even getting a 1 seed when it's all said and done. Because remember, they're going to play the Bears this week, and if they beat the Bears, they'll have the tiebreaker over them. Right now, the Bears are the 2 seed. So that's what you have with the NFC West. Now, speaking of the Bears, let's get to the games on Saturday. I'll go backwards. I'll talk about the Green Bay-Chicago game before I get to Philly-Washington. Not that there's much to talk about Philly-Washington, but there is a scenario there that I want to discuss about Nick Sirianni that I need to get off my chest. But as far as the game Saturday night, and I was with friends down in South Jersey, and I was watching from time to time. I saw that Green Bay had an opportunity to score a touchdown there early, and they got thwarted there on a 4th and goal. All right, early on, you want to try to play for the win. I get it. The days of the road team early on getting points on the board, which are always important, they are a thing of the past. Because it's always about analytics. More teams are going for 4th down than ever. So I'm not going to kill Matt LaFleur for going for it at that point. All right, fine. That's what it was. So they didn't get points out of that. And who knows, if they would have gotten a field goal there, obviously you don't know how the game's going to play out. But if it did play out the way it did, they would have won by a field goal. It would have been 19-16, and away we go. But the Bears, and I have to say this, I understand they won the game. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And the Packers, without Micah Parsons, the Bear offense was non-existent. They did not play well in the game until late, of course. And it made me think that even with Jordan Love out, and that's not the reason why they lost, because Love got knocked out, early 3rd quarter, about 8 minutes to go, somewhere around there. And Malik Willis, who, listen, he's not going to tickle anyone's fancy, to use an old-fashioned term right there. But he didn't lose the game for them. To me, what it boils down to, if you think back, for the Packer fan, I hate to bring up bad memories, but it brought me back to the NFC Championship game, 2014, the year 2015, where Richard Rodgers, I believe, was the player on the Hands team that was unable to get the onside kick, where the Packers had no business losing that game to Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, and that's when they went on to the Super Bowl and they lost to the Patriots that year. That was the famed Malcolm Butler play. But that's what you saw there on Saturday night, where the Bears, their offense was non-existent. And even though DJ Moore made plays and Kyle Monangai was great in the run and whatever, but they only mustered up 3 points through the first, I believe, 3 quarters, and then they made it to 16-9. But then all of a sudden, they were able to, they kicked the field goal to make it 16-9. And then they get the onside kick. So now they had a second life. They go on, they get the touchdown on a 4th and goal. There in the corner to, who was it? The player who caught his first pass in the game. Johnny, I got to look up his name. But he made his first catch in his pro career in that game. And then he caught the touchdown there with literally seconds on the clock. And they go into overtime. And in the overtime, they get the big pass play. DJ Moore makes that great catch there on a very good throw by Caleb Williams. And as I pull up the kid's name, it's not John I, it's not John A. I think it's John A. Let's see. As I'm doing this in live here. Here we go. Yeah, the kid's name is John Day Walker. So he makes the touchdown catch to push the game into overtime, and then Caleb Williams and DJ Moore on a long pass. And the Bears put themselves in a position to not only clinch a playoff spot, which they did yesterday with the Lions losing, and I'm going to get to that game. But now they have a great shot to host 2 games in their building, if it works out that way, with that win over the Packers. Because the Packers now are 9-5-1. The Bears are 11-4. So if the Bears lose the next 2 games, which could happen. Now, if the Lions need a game in Week 18, although the game's at Soldier Field, it's possible, but we know that Chicago's going to play San Francisco there on Sunday night. So that could be a possible L for them. But give it up, the Bears, even though their offense was not good, but they were able to make plays when they needed to, and the onside kick was heaven from the football gods above. They were able to beat the Packers, and I know no Jordan Love certainly helped, but that's not the reason why the Bears won. If it wasn't for the onside kick and Romeo Doubs muffing it, the Packers would have won, and that would have been it. But those are the breaks sometimes, so you have to give it up for the Bears. They're having a magic year. To me, they're having the same year that the Commanders had last year. So the Bears are this year's Washington Commanders by any means. So now you have a situation where let's see what they do in San Francisco, which will be a very interesting test for them. And they've been able to win these tests, whether winning in Philadelphia the way they did. And even though they lost to Green Bay 2 weeks ago, but they were in the game and could have tied it there late, and we saw the interception. But they rallied and came from behind to win in overtime this go-around. So you have to give it up. Bears are fine, and we'll talk more big picture with them down the road. And then the earlier game, Philly, now they beat up on the Commanders, no big whoop. But you saw that brawl there after 27-10, and they went for the two-point conversion. And even when I'm watching, I was in a restaurant at the time, I'm thinking to myself, why are they going for two here? What, because they want to make it 19 as opposed to 18? Now, the extra point would have made it 18, so they're still 3 scores behind. So, to me, it didn't make any sense. But then you saw the ensuing brawl where players and just littered the field. Ugly scene. And to me, that was all predicated on Nick Sirianni. That wasn't really talked about from what I saw in the postgame. But Sirianni was just sticking it to the Commanders, which to me, come on. And I understand people are going to say, well, hey, you got to go for points there. You got to win the score. There's no running it up in the NFL. But come on. They scored, I believe, 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes. I think it was maybe almost less than 5 to go in the game. It was already 28-10. The Commanders are not winning that game. I mean, are we kidding here? Josh Johnson is the quarterback. No Marcus Mariota, so I don't want to hear it. So people could get in my ear and be like, oh, JAYREELZ, come on. He's not running up the score. Nonsense. I'm not going to look at it that way. So Sirianni did that, and I'm sure Dan Quinn's going to remember that in 2 weeks because remember, they do play in the final Sunday of the NFL season. Who knows if the Eagles, who clinched the NFC East with that win there, and they're probably going to end up being a 3 seed at best. They're not going to be a 4 seed because the winner of Carolina and Tampa, and right now, what are they? 2 games ahead, I think, at this present moment. So they're going to be entrenched in the 3 seed unless they win the next 2 and the Bears lose the next 2, which could happen, but I can't foresee that. So that's what you have there with the Eagles as they win there on Saturday. And then yesterday, what can you say about a couple of these games, including the Steeler-Lion game, which I'll save that for a little bit later. But the Carolina Panthers are now in pole position to win the NFC South with their win yesterday, and they were down 10-6 in the game. But Bryce Young, I'm not going to say he's growing up in front of our eyes, but he's actually played well here during the stretch. I understand he's hot and cold. He didn't play well against Carolina a couple of weeks ago, or was it last week? And he's a guy that he's hit or miss. You don't know what you're going to get. But Carolina, at home, they took care of business, and Baker Mayfield, for all of the MVP talk in the first half of the season, at 23-20s, he's going down to try to at least get them in position to kick a game-time field goal. He throws a terrible interception. Now, mind you, the defensive back had to make a good play, but he threw it to where nobody was even near the ball with a white jersey. So he got picked off, game over. I don't think Todd Bowles is going to survive this. Now, that's not me going out on a limb, because this team, think about this. I believe their high water mark, let me pull this up just to be official. Their high water mark, I know they were 6-3 at one point. This team started off 3-0. They were 5-1 and 6-2 after beating the Saints. Since then, they've lost 6 of 7. And I thought they were a lock prior to the start of the year to not only win a division, but their number in Vegas was 9.5. You're thinking 6-2. Oh, man. And they played nobody down the stretch. All right, that second hour, the Patriots and Bills back-to-back weeks. All right, fine. Then the Rams. All right, tough stretch. I get it. They beat Arizona. Fine. They lose to the Saints, Falcons, and Panthers here. And that's when you knew that the season was going to go up in smoke. And now they got to go to Miami to play the Dolphins, who they're a dead team walking. They had Quinn Ewers in there yesterday. That's all I need to tell you, as the Bengals blew them out. And then they had the Panthers again, this time in their building. How does Todd Bowles survive? He cannot. And who knows? I know you got to break it down with tiebreakers. I can see Tampa beating Miami, and then Carolina, they have to host Seattle. Not going to be an easy game. Maybe Seattle, little pedal to the metal, or they take the pedal off the metal, I should say, and Carolina wins that game. I don't know, but the Buccaneers still have a shot. Although it's faint at this moment, but give it up. The Panthers, under their head coach, Dave Canales, and listen, they've done a phenomenal job. And if I look at their schedule real quick, well, how do they start their year? 0-2, 1-3. And then they evened out after that. And then since they won 3 in a row and they beat the Dolphins, Cowboys, and Jets, to put them at that point, they were 4-3. They've been win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. In this case, a win, because right now they're over 500. So 1-3, and since then, they're 7-4. Just a tremendous job. I don't know what else to tell you, because I certainly didn't have Carolina anywhere near, I hate to use this term, everybody's using it, the playoff bingo card, but give it up. They've done an excellent job there. All right, now I guess I got to get to it with this Steeler-Lion game. And let me see if there's anything else in the 1 o'clock window. Yeah, I'm not going to get to any of these other games. I mean, really, it's just a complete waste of time. You know what? Before I even get to that, let me get to this game. Is Jacksonville for real? Are they a serious threat there in the AFC? Well, yesterday shows that that could quite possibly be the case. Trevor Lawrence, who's been good here recently, and the team has played well, but despite Bo Nix, had a pick, I believe a fumble in the game, and I wasn't following this closely only because I was all over the Steeler game. But to think, the Jaguars, for them to put up 34 points on the road in Denver, I'm sure has the entire NFL, at least in this case the AFC, on notice to think, wait a minute. For Jacksonville to go in there and to put up 34, and let me just pull up the recap because I don't think any of those were from the pick six or fumble recovery variety. No, as I'm looking through here, no, all those were legit by their offense. So it's not as if they got a special teams touchdown or a defensive touchdown. All these were legit. And listen, I understand Denver, they're not going to be A+ every week, but for this late in the year in the Mile High Stadium, I was actually shocked. And do I have to take them seriously? I guess to a certain extent, but I don't fully trust them. Now, they probably will host a home game, even though the Houston Texans are nipping at their heels. But how I'm looking at it here is the Jaguars could be a tough out. And maybe they do have a big year. And Liam Cohen, the rookie head coach, listen, what more can you say about them? They've been very good. They've been maybe not spectacular yesterday notwithstanding, but they've been very steady, and they are 11-4 right now and have the inside track on winning the AFC South. So, listen, I'm not watching Jacksonville from start to finish, but they put me on notice. Again, I don't have my full trust in them, but who knows? I need to see this more when we get to January, and I'm sure we'll get to see a little bit of it, whomever it is that they play there in that first round. And right now, as a 3-6, they could have Buffalo going there in that opening round, which would be a very interesting test because the Bills obviously played well. Now, they had to sweat out the game yesterday thanks to James Cook as they beat the Browns, but at the same time, not a situation where the Jaguars, when you're thinking the NFC, everybody's thinking Denver, they're thinking New England. I'm not thinking Jacksonville, but now I'll have to put them on notice considering that they have an outside shot of getting 1 seed if everything broke right. So just keep that in mind. But I think Denver will survive. They have Kansas City on Thursday night, which forget about. And then their final game, isn't it in Vegas against the Raiders? At home against the Chargers. And the Chargers also playing well as they beat the Cowboys yesterday. And the Chargers are a game behind them for the... And that's going to be interesting too now that I think about it, because if the Chargers and Broncos win their next games, that's going to be for quite possibly most definitely the AFC West, but maybe a 1 seed, which we'll have to wait and see. So just keep that in mind as we move it along, and I'll recap all that on the back end when we go talk about the playoff picture. As like I said, it's becoming a lot clearer there in both conferences. Now let me get to Steelers in Detroit. Now this was a game, I was driving back from South Jersey. I listened to about up until 15-10 when the Steelers kicked the field goal. So what was that, early fourth quarter or late third? And when I got back into the apartment, I had to settle in, etc. It was 22-10. And the Lions just got the kickoff, and they drove to cut it to within 5. And then Jalen Warren, who had a 45-yard touchdown run to make it 22-10. And then I come back, and I see him run another 45-yarder to make it 29-17. So I'm thinking, all right, all is well. But let's just cut right to it. Now, I know you had scenarios where the Lions in the first half went for it similar to Green Bay in the Chicago game, and they got stifled there. Didn't come away with any points. We could talk about how the run game was stymied by the Steelers, and the Steelers run defense is terrible. And the run offense isn't great either, but they got a lot of contributions. Kenneth Gainwell played well. Obviously, Jalen Warren had a big day on the ground. Aaron Rodgers, again, when he has time and he's in that pocket, and yes, he can move. He could sidestep a player or two, but he has to get that ball out. He's not going to be able to scramble and do things that he did 5, 6, 7 years ago. But Rodgers has played well here during this stretch. And if he's going to play like this, who knows? Quite seriously. I mean, who knows? Do I think that they could go on a run? That may be a lot to ask for, but they may be able to win a playoff game in their building. Why not? It's no guarantee, but hey. And here it was at 29-24 after the Lions cut the lead again, and the Steelers missed a field goal, a rare miss there by Chris Boswell, which would have made it an 8-point game, which means a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. But now they're up by 5, and here come the Lions. Marching down the field, they convert a big fourth down where they actually got the flag, which was a terrible play by Kyle Duggar, and that extended the drive. Then they also got a break, the Steelers did, with the first offensive pass interference from the kid Tesla, where he had an illegal pass interference. But now let's get to the final play, 4th and goal, where I think they were around the 9-yard line, and here it was. They were going to take a shot in the end zone. Jared Goff finds Amon-Ra St. Brown, but you see flags flying everywhere. And as Amon-Ra's getting tackled, he laterals the ball to Jared Goff. He picks it up, goes in the end zone. It's a touchdown. But then the announcers, they didn't know what the hell was going on. That's Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. I'm calling you guys out. And your CBS production crew on top of that. I'll get to them in a second. But now it's bedlam. What is going on? What is happening? Everybody's pointing that the flag is to the Lions, which it was obvious when we saw the push-off. But the thing was, they couldn't get to a replay. Why, to get to the CBS production, why did they get to a replay? All you see was the officials, you see the sidelines, you see arms up, you see wave off, etc. And you even hear the roar of the crowd as they show the replay in the stadium. How come we didn't get to see that? I mean, that was an absolute joke. Why are they taking an hour and a half to show the replay of the push-off or even get an explanation as to what was happening, as to why they called it a touchdown? And we see why, whether there was a whistle blown or not. But as the dust settled and Carl Sheffers came out and said that, yes, the ruling on the field is a touchdown, but offensive pass interference, Amon-Ra St. Brown nullifies the penalty. Game is at 0. Steelers win. That is it. Because the pass interference happened prior to the catch. And that is when I was watching that, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I don't think I've ever watched a game, certainly never watched a game, or even heard about a game that ended in that fashion. Not just the offensive pass interference, but the lateral scoop touchdown, and then nullified by the penalty. Crazy endings everywhere, whether it's Seattle, Chicago, Detroit. And that's just the NFL in a nutshell here over these last 4 days, to think that all this had transpired. And man, the NFL hit a grand slam here over the weekend. Now, as we get ready for this playoff picture, to make it clear for everybody, let's go to the standings. Let's see where we're at. And I'm going to go through the schedule real quick because obviously with no podcast, we'll go through that and then some. But for the standings, where it is on this very moment by conference. AFC, even with Denver losing, New England, they still have the 1 seed as they have the tiebreaker over New England. Jacksonville, a game behind both teams. Like I said, now let me look real quick. Jacksonville does have a better conference record. So if that is the case to where all 3 teams are tied, let's say at the end of the day, Jacksonville will get the 1 seed. Denver will probably get the 2. Now, Denver and Jacksonville, if they both end up tied, obviously Jacksonville has the tiebreaker. So that knocks them out of the 1 seed. If all 3 teams are tied, Jacksonville, I believe, based on what I see here, should have the 1 seed. And if Jacksonville stubs their toe, New England wins, and Denver loses the game, then New England will get the 1 seed. That's how that shakes down. Pittsburgh will be entrenched in the 4. Forget about Baltimore. I didn't talk about them last night. Lamar Jackson had to leave the game with a bad back. Who knows what his status is going to be for Green Bay on Saturday night, and that's looking like that could be an awful game. Think about this. You may have Tyler Huntley for the Ravens go up against Malik Willis for the Packers in a Saturday night game. No thanks. So, Steelers are going to be entrenched in the 3 or the 4 seed, excuse me, and as it is right now, they're probably going to win the division. They go to Cleveland on Sunday, where Baltimore wants to go to Green Bay, and even with a healthy Jackson, who knows how that would fare. But any combination, Raven loss, Steelers win, the Steelers win the AFC North. So those are your top 4 seeds, followed by LA, Buffalo, the Titans. Remember, they're a game behind the Texans. The Texans are a game behind Buffalo and the Chargers. Now, it's going to be very interesting. Houston goes to LA to play the Chargers this week, and I believe that's the first of the 2 games on Saturday. That game is monumental because Houston, who are still battling it out for a division, I might add, but because of the wild card, if they beat the Chargers, they will have tiebreakers of both Buffalo and Los Angeles. So they could be the 5 seed and they may go to Pittsburgh. So keep that in mind. And Buffalo did not play the Chargers this regular season, so right now they have a better conference record. They're 8-2, so you got to keep that in mind as you move along. Colts, they got to win tonight to stay alive. If not, they're done. They'll be toast. So we'll get to see what happens there. Forget about the Ravens. Ravens are still alive there mathematically, but that's only in the division. You can forget about them in the wild card. In the West, we know about Seattle, Chicago, and the Bears. Chicago, could they catch Seattle? They both have the same conference record. They did not play head-to-head. So let me just double-check that. I don't believe they played head-to-head this year. No, they have not. I should have known that off the top of my head. Right, the NFC West team they're playing are the Niners, and that is this Saturday. So Seattle right now, although they're up, but they got the Niners breathing down their necks, as we talked about earlier, and the Rams still have a shot if the Seahawks stub their toe here, and they got to go to Carolina. It's not going to be easy. But the Bears should be entrenched in the 2, Philly in the 3, like I mentioned, and of course they have the tiebreaker over Philly based on the Black Friday game. Carolina, they're probably not going to catch Philly for the 3 seed, so they're going to be entrenched in the 4. Tampa still has a shot, as we know. We'll have to wait and see on that. Then you have the Rams, Niners. Packers currently have the 7 seed. Lions are 8. The only way the Lions make the playoffs is if they win the next 2 and the Packers lose the next 2. So that's it. So right now it's the same scenario like the Ravens and Steelers. Magic number is 1. Packer win, Lion loss, that's it. Because even if the Packers win the next 2 and the Lions win the next 2, because of that tie with Dallas, 10-6-1 is going to beat 10-7. So that's why their only shot is if they win the next 2 and the Packers lose. And if there's going to be no Jordan Love, it's a possibility. And the Lions, they got to go to Minnesota, which is not going to be easy, although J.J. McCarthy got hurt again. So you may have Max Brosner at quarterback, so they could win that game. And then play the Bears, who may not play for anything if they do beat the Niners. Let's say if they do, because they should be able, they'll clinch the 2 seed. And who knows, they could end up playing for a 1 if that's the case. But they do have an outside shot, but they're going to have to run the table, and they're going to have the Packers to lose too, which is obviously going to be a lot. And Tampa's only there because they still have a shot in the division based on just being one game behind, and they still have a shot there. So that is your entire NFL Week 16 playoff scenario as we move it along here on the podcast. All right, now let me get to the college because I got to get into... Oh, wait. Let me get back to the NFL real quick. My apologies. Schedule. The Christmas Day schedule, forget about it. You might as well just drink eggnog, unwrap gifts, and that's it. And have Christmas dinner. Because the games are atrocious. Dallas at Washington, forget about it. Detroit, Minnesota, okay, you want to see if Detroit wins. That I can understand. And not going to be an easy game on the road at Minnesota. So I'll give you that game. The night game. Watch the NBA. Watch the NBA early and late. Because Denver at Kansas City. Did you see what Kansas City did yesterday? As they, and I get it. No Patrick Mahomes. No, but they lost to the Titans. No, they didn't lose them by a field goal. They lost 26-9. So no thanks. Ugh, brutal. Then your two Saturday games, as we talked about. Houston, LA, great game. Chargers, Baltimore, Green Bay. Sunday, and these are the games that have implications. I'm not saying Arizona, Cincinnati. No. Jacksonville, Indianapolis, depending on what the Colts do tonight. Pittsburgh at Cleveland to clinch in the AFC North. Seattle at Carolina. Philadelphia at Buffalo. That's going to be a good game, period. But Chicago, San Francisco. And the Monday night game is Rams at Falcons. That is your schedule here for Week 17. Now, as far as the college, I'll get to that right now. To me, what we're looking at here storyline-wise, or you know what, maybe let's get to the games first for the storylines. Forget about James Madison, Tulane. I understand Tulane 17-3 at the half against Ole Miss, but obviously got their doors blown off. And then James Madison, forget about it. 34-6 at the half. What is there to discuss against Oregon? Now, the Alabama game I watched. Every play. Miami, Texas A&M, I did not. But here's how I'll break it down. Alabama, tremendous. You're down 17-0. John Mateer's running the ball. He's zinging it. He's doing everything. The Alabama offense was lifeless. 12 yards as they got the ball after 17-0. And it looked like it was going to be a long night. Now, at 17-0, they marched down to get the touchdown on a 4th and 2, which they had to go for it. That was 4-down territory. You can't kick a field goal there. I mean, what is that going to do for you if you're Alabama? So they get the touchdown, 17-7. And to me, this was the biggest play of the game. Where John Mateer found the receiver there as it looked like he was doing a skinny post to the end zone, and it slipped right through his fingertips. He had a walk-in touchdown, which would have made it 24-7, and who knows what the complexion of the game would have been from that point on. As it was, they punted. Alabama came back, kicked a field goal. The next drive, John Mateer throws an atrocious pass. Pick six the other way. It's 17 up at the half. So think about it. That would have been touchdown 24-7. Who knows what that game would have been? It probably would have been 34-24 Oklahoma as opposed to 34-24 Alabama. And then Bama's defense woke up. They stymied John Mateer in the second half, sacked him 5 times. Alabama, Ty Simpson made some big plays, some big touchdown throws, and that was it. And I had a feeling that the game was going to be a bit high scoring because everybody thought it was going to be a low scoring game, 17-13, 17-14, 19-17. I don't know. Something told me, let me go against the grain. And I picked 28-24 Alabama, and look, it was 34-24. Bad performance by Oklahoma. I mean, what could you say? And now the Crimson Tide will go up against the number 1 seed in Indiana. And I'll get to the storylines in a minute when it comes to the games next week for New Year's Day and New Year's Eve. But then let me get to Miami and Texas A&M because I was traveling that day to South Jersey. I was trying to monitor on my phone. And when I saw a 3-0 late third quarter, I almost said, no, that's got to be a typo. Miami's defense came to play. It was reminiscent of the old Miami Hurricane defense, the days of Ray Lewis, Warren Sapp. You want to even go back further, Cortez Kennedy, Benny and Brian Blades. I mean, that's even further back. But to me, what it boiled down to was the final drive. Marcel Reed, who had a very good year and did not have a good game, but had a chance to make amends. And for him, at the shadow of the Hurricane goal line, throws a pick in the end zone. Oh, geez, that was just, If you're an Aggie fan, you probably haven't slept a wink. And the Hurricanes get out of Dodge. I didn't think they were going to win the game. I thought A&M was going to maybe not win handily, and I forgot what score I picked, but I got news for you. That is a bitter loss. Oklahoma was bad, but the Aggies, to put up 3 points in your building? I mean, come on. That was just a shock of all shocks. So for the Hurricanes to win, big win for them. They'll move on to play Ohio State, which is going to be reminiscent of the 2002 National Championship game. Now, of course, obviously it's 23 years ago. But I'm sure you're going to see a lot of the highlights of that game and Willis McGahee with the gruesome knee injury and Maurice Clarett, etc. But for now, we move on to the semifinals, to the quarterfinals. And here are my storylines. Number one, I had to start off, are Alabama and Miami live dogs here? I think they are. Who has a better shot to win? Does the Crimson Tide have a better shot to win against Indiana or Hurricanes against Ohio State? I think Alabama's more of a live dog. I almost get the feeling that because Miami were only able to put up 10 points and they're going to go up against Ohio State, we know they have a very good defense. To me, I think it's a situation where I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State, it's 21-6 at the half. As for Alabama, I think they're cooking with gas. Now, Indiana's defense is good. You have the Heisman Trophy winner there, and obviously the 1 seed overall in Indiana. I think Indiana will win the game. And I'll talk more about it next week. I'll give you more of a prediction and score. I just want to give you storylines to boot. I think Indiana will win, but I'm not 100% confident because now Alabama, we know their pedigree. I understand this isn't Nick Saban. I understand that this is a whole different coaching regime. But when you're down 17-0 on the road, and maybe that was more of a thing because they got the big break, and you also got to remember they had the muff punt, which that set up the touchdown. Because that was a big-time play where they got the snap, and yeah, I believe that was after the touchdown. That's where they kicked the field goal to make it 17-10. So they got a big break there. Now, I don't know, man. My gut, Indiana, 100%. I got to give them their respect. I got to give them their due, no doubt. But I don't know, man. And I'll get a better feel next week because right now I'm still like in the pro football mode and coming off of the weekend and what we saw there. But I don't know. There's something about the Crimson Tide right now that I think they're cooking with gas, and I think that they could pull off another upset. And one more time, when we get to next week, it'll be a different story. I'll get a much more better feel, break it down, etc. as we move it along here. But to me, that's the storyline number one. The storyline number two is Indiana. It has to be. This team, this is newfound territory for them. If this was the basketball team, I'd be like, hey, you're talking the Hoosiers. You're talking Bobby Knight. You're talking Keith Smart. You're talking, we're going down the list with the success that they had there, even going back to the 50s. But for them right now, for Curt Cignetti and for the quarterback, how they handle this game is going to be interesting. If it's a situation where it's midway through the third quarter and the Crimson Tide have scored, it's now 24-17 with, 3.5 minutes to go in the third. How do they respond? Are they going to react tightly? Are they going to be conservative? Because we've seen Cignetti get conservative. More so last year than this year because they played with a lot of big leads. But this is what I mean. I want to see when the pressure is on and the money's on the line, how the coach and the quarterback's going to respond. And that's why I think Indiana, they're going to be fascinating. This isn't a situation where Ohio State, they've won. This isn't a situation where Georgia and Kirby Smart, they've won in the past. This isn't a scenario, or even you want to say Texas Tech. All right, I can understand maybe there's a little bit of doubt, and you wonder whether or not that they're going to rise to the occasion. But we've seen the Buckeyes and the Bulldogs on big stages deliver. So we wouldn't expect them to be tight. or we wouldn't expect them to be conservative. We would expect them to play to win. We have not seen that with Indiana. And yes, I understand they won at Oregon. And yes, I understand they beat Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship. But now this is the playoffs. It's a whole new world. So I'm going to be interested to see how they're going to perform here against Alabama. And obviously if they win moving forward. And then also you got to think about Ohio State. Can they repeat? They are a team that obviously last year with the road that they went through and getting to a national title and beating Notre Dame and trying to see if they can piggyback that with another championship. Now, this Ohio game, or this game against Miami is going to be interesting, and I would think that they should be able to prevail and win, but is it a lock? Is it a guarantee? I definitely won't say that's definitely not the case. I sure don't think so. And what's going to help, though, is that the games are going to be on a neutral ground. So it's not as if Miami's going to go play in Columbus. It's not as if they have to go play in that type of weather, that type of environment. They're going to be playing the game at AT&T. That's the Cotton Bowl. Controlled environment with the indoors, the elements, the track, etc., which could actually bode well for the Hurricanes. But let's see what Ohio State's going to do as they try to repeat. And then the last one, I know we could say Georgia because of their recent pedigree. I won't say that. To me, what I'm more fascinated by this storyline is Ole Miss. All right, we saw them beat Tulane, no surprise. But because of everything that had transpired, with the departure of Lane Kiffin, going to LSU, leaving them high and dry, and the team who's performed well all year, and now they got this win under their belt. And Georgia, obviously, a team that they know pretty damn well. They are no strangers. We know that they had a tough loss there back, when was it, in early November, when they were at Georgia and they lost by 8. And they actually had, I believe, what, they were by 11 in that game at one point? Let me just double check that. Ole Miss, yes, they were. Late in the third quarter, and Georgia came back. Maybe there's a little bit of that revenge factor, similar to what Alabama did to Oklahoma in the regular year. But as much as we can talk about Georgia and whatever, Kirby Smart and the championships that they won a few years ago, yada, yada, yada. But I'm more interested about how Ole Miss responds. Not only will they win another game to get to a semifinal, to say, we didn't need Lane Kiffin, but even more so to beat Georgia along in the process. That, to me, is a very interesting storyline. And you know what? I'm probably going to save it for next week because these games aren't going to be until the following Wednesday and Thursday. But I gave you a little teaser. Maybe a bit more of a teaser. So just keep that in mind for next Monday when we break it all down. I'll give you predictions, etc. Even I gave you a little thought or a nugget as to how I feel about this quarterfinal, but I think all the games. And I'll give you more then. I don't want to spoil it now as I think, which team could be close, upset specials, things of that nature. I gave you a taste about Alabama if I think they're going to upset, but I'll give you predictions and all that next Monday when we convene at that time. And as far as the other bowl games, people, I can't get into the bowl games. I mean, to me, it's all about the playoff. I can't tell you who's going to win the Rent-A-Center Pixie Bowl. I mean, come on. Am I going to sit there and watch these games? Absolutely not. All right, so let me turn my attention now to the hardwood as I get to the NBA, and I'm going to get to college basketball, once we get to January. So I just want to throw that out there to keep people in mind that I have not forgotten about college basketball, but obviously once we get past 2025 and into 2026, I'll unpack that further and get into it at that time. But as far as the association goes, I'm going to start off by saying this. There isn't really much to get into when it comes to the standings, things of that nature, because as we know, the NBA, similar to the NHL, they're in the wilderness because you haven't had interesting matchups or interesting moments, I should say, unless you want to talk about OKC losing again to Minnesota there. So now they have 3 losses, so they're a third of the way to tying the 73-9 record set by the 2015-16 Warriors. So if you're wrapped up in that, be my guest. But yeah, as far as the teams and where we stand, and I get it that the Spurs are playing well and they're going to play Oklahoma City on Christmas. But to me, everybody's going to look forward to the Christmas schedule. And I'm going to say this now. I don't work for the NBA. I'm not a shill for the league. Adam Silver is not on my speed dial. But I have to say this, just like I said earlier when we went through the NFL schedule. I hope more people pay attention to the NBA than they do the football. Dallas and Washington, I understand they're the Cowboys, but they're officially done. Nobody cares. The Commanders, dead team walking. Please, like I said, have your Christmas lunch, open gifts, toast some eggnog, watch Cleveland at New York to play the Knicks. Start your day off by watching that. And then the next game is San Antonio and Oklahoma City. So that's back-to-back. So you can forget about that. I don't care if 4:30 is Detroit, Minnesota. That's a game you can just pop on. Oh, are the Lions winning? Oh, all right, they're up 14-0. All right, fine, whatever. That's it. Now, if they're trailing, you want to be locked in? Absolutely. But to me, the NFL is a complete waste of time. Denver, Kansas City at night? No thanks. So you're scheduled there for the NBA, and it's a good schedule. The first two games, as I mentioned, Cleveland at the Knicks. Anytime you get MSG and that setting to start off your Christmas Day schedule, nothing better than that. San Antonio at Oklahoma City. Then at 5 o'clock, you have Dallas going to Golden State, so another hug fest for Klay Thompson, and we've already seen that last year. Houston, the Rockets at LA, very good game to play the Lakers. And all the games are on ABC, ESPN. I believe the Knick game is ESPN, ABC it has, so it's flip-flopped. And then your nightcap is Minnesota at Denver, where you got Jokic and Anthony Edwards, and he just came back from an injury. So the NBA schedule is fantastic. Only one Eastern Conference matchup, which I don't like, but I get it. The East is weak. It sucks. What have you. So that's what you have there with the NBA as far as their schedule goes. And like I said, I know the Spurs are playing well. They won 6 in a row, but there isn't really anything to sink your teeth into or to unpack. To say, oh, did you see this? Oh, did you see that? No. At least based on my vantage point, I do not. Now, your schedule in the week overall, and I'm just going to give you like the good games. I'm not going to go through the whole schedule that I usually do from Monday to Thursday. I'm going to give you the full week. Games that are of note that I think are interesting. Tonight, well, Indiana's bad. Indiana at Boston. Tonight, you don't really have anything. I mean, you have Oklahoma City playing Memphis. Denver hosting Utah. Detroit at Portland. Orlando at Golden State. Maybe that's the game of the night. Who knows? And you have 2 Peacock games. Charlotte at Cleveland. Memphis, Oklahoma City. So that's that. Your NBC Peacock games. Denver at Dallas tomorrow. Followed by Houston at the Clippers. So Houston will be in LA because obviously Clippers Tuesday. Lakers on Thursday. Let's see. So tomorrow night, Toronto at Miami. Didn't they just play last week in Miami? I think they did. Last Tuesday. Knicks are in Minnesota. So you have the Karl Anthony Towns going back to the Twin Cities. Oklahoma City at San Antonio. So there you go. A home and home there as they'll play in Oklahoma City on Thursday. Lakers and Phoenix. Yeah, and then Houston at the Clippers. Yeah, that rounds out your Wednesday. You know about the games Thursday. Friday, nothing to really scream at. No, the games are terrible on Friday. Saturday, here's your prime video games for Friday. Philly at Chicago, and Clippers in Portland. Ugh. Now, Saturday, Denver and Orlando. Cleveland at Houston. Yeah, Utah, San Antonio. That's what you have there. And then Sunday, Golden State at Toronto. Philly at Oklahoma City. Yeah, Detroit at LA, but that's the Clippers. Sacramento, LA, Lakers, and then Boston at Portland. Not a great week. So Christmas Day should be your focus. Again, punt the NFL away and stick to the NBA if you're yours truly. Now let me turn my attention to the ice. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything there. Turn my attention to the ice. Unfortunately, again, nothing really to get at, unpack, have some fun with. Let me see. NHL. Jack Hughes returns. He scored as they lose to the Sabres. You had a couple of trades there. I know the Canadiens made a trade with the Kings. Philip Dennell. Let me see. Anything else? No, I mean, there's nothing really else to get into. The only news that I have, Sidney Crosby eclipses Mario Lemieux. And who would ever have thought that anybody would top Mario Lemieux as far as points scored overall? But he did do so with a goal and assist against Montreal a couple of days ago. And Sid the Kid, as we all know, I mean, listen, forget about Hall of Famer. I mean, lock Hall of Famer, all-time great. Maybe when it's all said, is he top 20? Probably. So, and the Penguins, they've been middle of the pack there in the Metropolitan as I pull up the standings. Yeah, they are currently, well, actually, even gone down. They're next to the last, 5 points ahead of the Blue Jackets, but they're only 2, 3, 4. They have 5 teams ahead of them, but only separated by 4 points. So it's not as if they're not within shouting distance. So that's a good thing. Colorado still hasn't lost. They still have 2 regulation losses. Stars have played well. 4 points behind them. Anaheim in first. Vegas Golden Knights. Edmonton. They are 2 points behind them. Those 3 teams jumbled up in the Pacific. But besides Crosby, and congratulations to him, that's what you got. As I like to say, you got a whole lot of nada, nothing, with the league on the whole. Now, as far as the schedule goes, and again, these are just the good games starting tonight. Seattle at Anaheim. Tomorrow, Pittsburgh at Toronto. Montreal at Boston. I say Jersey at New York only because, and that's not really a rival. Florida, Carolina. Philly, Chicago. San Jose at Vegas. Seattle, Los Angeles. Those are a couple good games. Yeah, Battle of Alberta, Calgary at Edmonton. That is Tuesday. Now, there are no games Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so a little bit of a Christmas break, so you're not going to get a lot there. Saturday, Rangers, Islanders, for what that's worth. Boston, Buffalo. Oh, this is looking like rivalry day. Ottawa, Toronto. Tampa at Florida. Washington at the Devils. Detroit at Carolina. Minnesota at Winnipeg. Anaheim at LA. Colorado at Vegas. Yeah, you have some very good games there on Saturday. And then Sunday, Montreal at Tampa. And Toronto, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Chicago. The schedule, Philadelphia at Seattle. Schedule, not great. Obviously, Tuesday's the big day. You have all the games. I think everybody's playing. But besides that, that's what you got with the NHL. Now let me turn my attention to land this plane with a couple of things. I have baseball. One of the top free agents, in this case, a Japanese slugger, Munetaka Murakami, who was going to post, and we didn't know what team he was going to go to. Maybe it could have been the Dodgers, could have been the Mets, could have been another team. Well, he did go to a big market, but he ends up in Chicago. And not for the Cubs, for the White Sox. Shocker there. I mean, I don't even know what to say. Oh, and I see this thing, DK Metcalf. I didn't talk about that. Yeah, he was an idiot trying to, come on, what are you doing shoving a fan during the game if I didn't talk about that earlier? That was a terrible job by DK Metcalf. Anyway, I digress. He's not going to get suspended. He'll get fined, though. When I saw that that the White Sox got him, and I don't even know what the contract, I think it's supposed to be like 5 for 80, if I'm not mistaken, but I understand the Mets weren't going to be in play for him only because they got Polanco, Jorge Polanco, they signed a couple weeks ago. He's going to play first base, which never played first base in his life. You get Murakami there, and maybe you have Polanco bounce around. But I get it, you're paying $20 million. It's not going to happen. But yeah, Murakami, I mean, what can you say? Another lost opportunity for the Mets. As the Mets continue to sign the Yankee relievers and Yankee players, as you know. And even though the Yankees re-signed Paul Blackburn, a former Met, I don't know if that was a touche. No, I'm kidding. But the Yankees haven't done anything, although I think Brian Cashman has something up his sleeve, so you got to keep in mind what's going to happen with him. And you've had some other trades. I know the Orioles have been active. They get Shane Baz from Tampa, as they gave him a couple of big-time prospects. They also, the Rays, that is, they sent Brandon Lowe to the Pirates in a three-way deal. So Tampa always looking to unload and get better, and they usually do. But let's see how this trade works out for them. The Red Sox acquire William Contreras from the Cardinals, second time that they've made moves this year, because remember, the Red Sox got Sonny Gray from St. Louis a few weeks back. But that's been it. As far as the big free agents that are out there, I know Michael King re-up with the Padres. That he did, but we're still waiting on the Framber Valdez's of the world, the the Ranger Suarez's, the Alex Bregmans, guys of that ilk. We're still waiting for those big free agents to come off the board, and we'll stay on top of it. But right now, nothing has been heard, no rumors, nothing has been bandied about as far as some of those bigger names in the sport being free agents and signing elsewhere. And then lastly, as I put on my boxing gloves to get in the ring, and I understand this is something that is a little, as I rub my face, I have nothing against Jake Paul. Absolutely not. He's out here doing Jake Paul stuff. Content on YouTube. We know about his podcast, his stake in that realm, being a YouTuber, businessman, has his, I guess, energy drink, whatever it is. He and his brother Logan Paul. So I can't knock, certainly not going to hate. Why would I hate on another man in that regard? But he has another Netflix, let me enunciate, fight where the situation with Gervonta Davis, that fizzled out because of the domestic violence accusations that he has on his hands, and with the pivot that they made to have Anthony Joshua step in the ring with Jake Paul, who's giving up 5 inches, muscle, and reach, the whole 9, where it would have been the opposite if he was going to fight Tank Davis. But for him to step in that ring, which I give him much respect, to bring Joshua on board, to be like, hey, you want to make X amount of millions? Everybody will scream, everybody will be on top of it, whatever. Kudos. Where the fight was pretty much fair game. No fine print. No, hey, listen, man, you can't attack me. You can't do this. Yeah, I'll take a few punches. That it was scripted. No, none of that. I'm sure he made a boatload of money. God bless him for it. But the bottom line is this. He didn't belong in the ring with Anthony Joshua. He didn't even belong in the building with him. And that's not a knock. That's a fact. And the best way to compare it, yours truly, baseball, my first love. That's like me taking hacks against a low A or a single A minor league pitcher. And here I'm getting a couple of good swings. Ooh, yeah, I got a line drive over second base. Ooh, I hit one to the warning track. Oh, hey, I got one over the wall. Fantastic. You know what? Now I want to go up against a major league pitcher. And I'm at a neutral spot. It's not a big baseball game. But let's say I'm getting some hits off of the single A pitcher. Now I'm going to go up against, and forget about, you don't need to put in Tarek Skubal or Garrett Crochet. You could put in a mop-up reliever. Throw in anybody, whomever it may be. For grins and giggles, what the hell? Let me go into the batter's box against the likes of a Michael King. And there I am in the batter's box. All right, Michael King, yeah, he throws hard. He's got some off speed, but that's all right. Maybe I could catch up on one of those fastballs. Maybe I could hit a 38 hopper through the hole, base hit. I wouldn't know what was thrown past me if I get into a batter's box with Michael King. Right, so I don't have to name a top pitcher in the sport. It could be a guy who has an ERA over 6 and is in the major leagues. And guess what? I'm going to be twisted like a pretzel trying to swing, whether over an off-speed pitch, curveball, etc. That is the exact same deal that Jake Paul. I understand. He has a record, a bit of a resume. Forget about Mike Tyson. That doesn't count. I understand it does, but still. This one here counted. And one more time, Forget about the size, the skill, etc. He is light years behind Joshua. So even if you put a boxer who is middle of the pack, that is a cruiserweight, heavyweight, whatever, he would still school Jake Paul. Still. And I'm sure you've heard the comparisons real quick with basketball. You can have a lot of these street ballers play and have handle and have hops and have all this and can pass, whatever. But compare them to an NBA player, and the NBA players have said it. They said, they can't hang with us. There's no way. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So Jake Paul, listen, kudos to you, my guy. You went in there and fought the fight and obviously got knocked out. Broken jaw in 2 spots. Didn't look good in the process, that fight. And I didn't watch the fight. I did see the 6th round. But from what I read, the crowd was restless. They booed. He was just dancing around the ring. He knew better. But I got to give it up. There was no fine print. It wasn't orchestrated. It wasn't choreographed. So that I give it up. But come on. The guy was winded. He was flailing away at his punches. He just looked sloppy. And I get he had to gain weight for this. And I'm not trying to pick on him. This is his business. From what I seen with my own eyes, especially in that 6th round, he didn't belong in that ring. Did not. And I will say that until the end of time. And I'm sure a lot of people out there who watch boxing, follow boxing, or even has a brain to think he didn't belong in a ring with that guy. That's all there is to it. So that's what you have there. But I give him credit. But the thing is he respected for it? Is he ridiculed? Is it both? Is it more respected, more ridiculed? That's all on you. I talked about that on the YouTube channel. If you want to go back and watch it a couple days ago, check it out. And that's what you have there with the fight regarding Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. And Joshua's looking to fight Tyson Fury now as he called him out and saying, hey, and I would like to see that happen. Why not? Fury is the antithesis. He's just a big guy, not cut, etc. And Joshua looks like he's a Greek god. So let's see if there's going to be any fruition with that match at some point, maybe in a not so distant future. That'll do it, my good people. Another episode just about the books, as always. Thank you so much for stopping by, carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say about the toy department of life called sports. And one more time, please subscribe. Also on Apple, Spotify, throw me a few stars, write me a review. The website, JAYREELZ.com. Of course, the YouTube channel at JAYREELZ. Please subscribe, take a screenshot, send it to me on social, Apple, Spotify, etc., as you know. But on my social media accounts, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the JAYREELZ Podcast. Or on Instagram, JAYREELZ. Twitter, JAYREELZ1, just a number. Twitch, JAYREELZ1, just a number. And if you have a question, comment, suggestion, you can do so at the JAYREELZ Podcast at gmail.com or those aforementioned social media accounts. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. It's in the blood. It's in the DNA since birth. Just trying to blaze a trail, a path in this podcast, YouTube channel space because this right here is passionate, real, true sports talk. No clickbait, no rage bait nonsense. Remember, this is made by a sports fan, lifelong sports fan, for you guys and gals, the sports fan. So whenever I sit in front of this camera and microphone, I promise you're not going to get any of that artificial filler, that clickbait, like, oh, is this team the worst ever? No, you're not going to get any of that nonsense. You're going to get passion, fire, energy, fury with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, the JAYREELZ Podcast always comes correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx to South Beach to South Central to South Pacific and all points beyond. Peace, love, and God bless everybody. Live stream Wednesday, 12 noon Eastern time on YouTube. Check it out. And, of course, no podcast on Thursday, but go to the channel. Subscribe there to get all and everything that's happening in the world of sports. Have a Merry Christmas. Happy Kwanzaa. I know Hanukkah ended today, but however you celebrate, happy holidays to you and yours. I'll see you here on the podcast a week from today. And until next time on the JAYREELZ Podcast, on the flip, baby.